we're going to move to the next one immediately. So that's Amazing AI Jam. And let's have a couple of just before we go to the fun part of having our mentors, a new set of mentors to talk about their experiences with game jams, a couple of things about our jam that is happening, so that if you haven't yet registered for this, maybe you can join now or kind of get interested in working on this in the upcoming days.
And then I can already see our mentors for our next jam is already
so
there. So you can move it there for preparing your mic. We have to chop chop, make you look pretty.
Powdering and the mics happening. So yeah, the Amazing AI Jam is about using your favorite AI tool as part of your game jam process. So generative tools for images or writing, as we heard today, for instance. It can be in any way of the kind of co-jammer, as Sully was expressing.
Yeah, so basically you can get inspired by text descriptions or stories that AI-generated tools have made for you, images that could be inspiration points for your game idea. Or you can basically also incorporate some sort of AI-generated tool in part of your game-making process. So basically inviting AI as your jam team.
Yeah, as a member of the team.
Yeah.
And for instance, we have an access to Write with Leica, if you want to test what Char was presenting for us today. But then all together, we already had a little bit of that discussion. There is a budding, very now discussion of the ethical sides and the licensing sides and all of that. So just kind of do a little bit of research of your tool, how it is the best way of utilizing that. It's a very multifaceted discussion. I can't give you very rules of thumbs at the moment because we're trying to figure it out. But at least check whether you can utilize the parts that were created with these tools according to the license that you will decide on your game. So we're giving you freedom to choose. There is a certain Creative Commons license that we recommend to you, but you can use other licenses also to release your game. It just has to be available for us to play for free. Yeah. So that's one of the things in this, but it can be anything from images to text, or even for instance, translations. That's one of the options. And we do ask, like you saw that we listed off the tools, we do ask for you to be completely transparent of everything that you used, even like Photoshop. But specifically, we ask you to describe how did you, and what kind of tool, how did you use your AI tool. So for instance, if you use Midjourney image generation for getting inspiration of environments, for instance, or use it as tarot cards for making a narrative for your story, just please explain that. If you use multiple tools, just explain all of that. And it's super interesting for others to also know about your process of using those. And some of you might work solo, like on this previous jam, or you already have a team, or you have a team that is open for new members. And then we have a matchmaking process or program, so you can be also matched with others. And we try to have as international teams as possible for you to kind of meet new people online. That's the magic of online jam. Also, one thing that is really good to mention in here is that some of you might think that, oh, the global game jam is coming, so we're not going to do this jam, we're going to do that jam. But you can combine these two by starting at the Global Game Jam, which is 2 weeks away. So you start there, and then you have your team there, and then you also continue with our jam, which is 2 weeks after that with the deadline. So let's see in the schedule.
Schedule-wise, it works perfectly well aligned with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have the kickoff today, brainstorming tomorrow. It's optional to attend the brainstorming. We highly recommend, even though you wouldn't keep those ideas, or just to kind of get this fun stuff happening with others. And then we have the matchmaking suggestions if you were part of that process. And we try to get the teams done by the end of this week. So it's a slower jam because it's 1 month. So it's not like a 1 weekend game jam that you have to start doing things immediately. So this is just kind of slower progress. And then from the next Monday onwards, all the things happens in Discord with daily progress reports. You will have your project will have your own channel, So one of the jammers from the previous jam, for instance, made a devlog there. Even though nothing happened, there's a daily progress in there.
I noticed there's a one typo of the midterm feedback. That's
that's
not November. That's February.
Not November.
So if you attend Global Game Jam, which is happening in the first weekend of February, just after that, we're going to have a midterm feedback of 6th or 7th of February, 2023. And that's where we're going to meet like mentors that we're going to give you a feedback. And then you can also develop the game further from there. And our final submission day, it's on 23rd of February, so exactly 1 month from now.
And then there is a short time when we ask also all the jammers to comment on itch.io and playing the games, and we have our mentors to do their commenting then. And then on the 6th of March, which is a reveal of our next date of the event day, with the topic of games with an agenda. In that program, we're going to review the games.
Yes, so 6th of March, we're going to have another event day.
So
your calendar.
It's a 1 month game, but you can decide to do, for instance, 1 hour. That's why we asked the entirety of your hours. And there's going to be a theme. But before that, we have new mentors coming in. So let's invite them to the stage. So Arvi and Samuli, and then we have Eevi online.
Yes.
Take your seat.
Oh yeah, I had this.
Yes, and I noticed that you guys were sitting relaxing over there until we invited you over to the stage, and now we're like, the work begins.
So welcome to Games Now Online Jam.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Eevi. Fantastic. Can you hear us?
Hi.
Oh, yes, we
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Excellent.
All right, so unfortunately, I guess, Arvi, Samuli, Eevi, and Tarja. Tarja was not able to join. Just a second. How are you doing, Eevi?
I'm good. Hope you're all good there. Hope you've had a wonderful day.
We've had an excellent day filled with a lot of inspiring talks, and we are just ready to jam with the help of our mentors. So it's wonderful to have such a kind of, you are all very well versed in game jamming. I guess I met Eevi in Tampere back in the day in game jams.
Oh, yeah.
Global game
Good
jams.
Old days. Yeah.
And then Tarja is actually Director of Communications at Global Game Jam. Tarja is an expert on inclusivity, accessibility things, and the community building stuff. So we are happy to have her with us, even though that she can't be here today. But we're going to go this way, that we're going to have your presentations. But I hope you are feeling good, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yep. Of course. Always
ready.
And kind of of the previous presentation is it still difficult with the Game Boy Studio to make the music?
It's not as easy as recording your instrument with the microphone, so you have to use a tracker software, but luckily most of the tracker software nowadays are easier to use than in 80s.
Yeah, good. So Samuli is well known of jamming on obsolete consoles, and we're going to hear about that hopefully also today. But should we? So our mentors are actually introducing themselves, I hope. So we're going to start with the introduction of Eevi, because she's there ready to have the presentation. So the stage is yours for your mini presentation.
All right, excellent. Hey, everyone, once again. So me, if you don't know who I am, I'm Eevi Korhonen. I've been in the industry now over a decade. I got my start in Tampere. As Ako mentioned, I did a double bachelor, or one bachelor after the other, first in English translation and later in media, when I discovered that my true passion in this world is making games. And I'm currently working as a senior narrative designer at Housemarque, and there you can see also some other companies I've worked with before, and you might have seen my work in these tiny games that come out of Finland called Control and Returnal. And I haven't jammed in a while. Mostly I did it during my student days, but while I was studying, I was more of a game designer. So I put together some game design tips and tricks that I think are useful for kind of like a jamming situation when you're kind of like trying very quickly to get together something that works. And my first tip is when you're trying to balance any sort of number, rule of 2 is very good for you to kind of quickly find what's the kind of correct number that you're looking for. So if the number, whatever it is it speed, is it damage, double it or half it. Like if you think it needs to be more, go for twice the amount that it was, or if it needs to be lesser, halve it, and then keep using that process and you'll eventually land on the correct number. It's usually not useful to use small increments because kind of like that doubling and halving will give you that kind of like sensation like, am I going in the right direction much faster than doing like incremental increases or decreases. So rule of 2. Then another one is learning curves. So especially if your game has a lot of mechanics or different types of enemies or anything like that, try to present them one challenge at a time. Hopefully also maybe you're making a game that only has like one core mechanic. But like if you do end up adding stuff onto it, one challenge at a time for the player experience. And once you've taught the player something, let them try it out as soon as possible. So they kind of like, you've seen something, now you get to do it. Pretty basic stuff, but, sometimes easy to forget when you're jamming. If you have any kind of rewards in your game, usually like this is kind of like a generic rule, but 100 tiny rewards are better than one big one. You can use them almost as breadcrumbs to encourage the behavior that you want to see in the game. So whatever you want the players to do, reward them for it. And as I mentioned, breadcrumbs, signposting. Again, if you have any kind of like map or kind of like, free movement in the game, and it's not just side-scrolling, give players clues where to go and what to do. You can use various different things like rewards or literal signposts, monsters, eye-catching details, lighting, anything to give them an idea of where to go. You are the developer, so of course you know where to go, but when you give it to a brand new tester who's never seen your game, they can very easily get lost. So think about this already when you're building your game, if it has free movement and like map sort of open world thing. And then feedback. This usually comes a little bit more in the polished phase, but I think it's good to incorporate it already when you're building something. So anything that the player does should be accompanied with animation, visual effect, and or sound. So even if it's a placeholder thing, if you're just feeling that something is not working, check, does it have feedback? Because most of the time, something feeling wrong is just like a lot of times a lack of feedback for the player. Like when I click something, like even if it made that click noise or the kind of item flashes a little bit, it helps me to know that the game is responding to what I'm doing. So this is, again, placeholder stuff early on. Don't over kind of like, invest into something that might still get cut. But if you're kind of like already very confident in your design, start adding that little bit of polish, and I think you'll be surprised by how much better it will feel. And even though I gave you a whole bunch of tips as kind of like rules, there is no golden rule. So understand these rules, follow them, and then when you know that you're intentionally breaking them, then do that. But there's one golden rule, and that is to test your game. Test your game, have others test your game. And what is fun, add more of it. What is unfun, change it. And rinse and repeat, and that's how you make a game. And that's my quick tips and tricks for game design.
That's super perfect. I'm pretty sure that Arvi and Samuli are also agreeing with these tips, more or less.
Personally, I just make everything perfect on the first try instead of testing. I don't know why others don't do that.
So that's the platinum rule above the golden rule. Just have it perfect, then you guys.
Yeah, do testing or be Arvi. that's two options.
Okay, so we cannot
How
use the
many
clicker.
jams each one of you have you counted? Eevi, have you counted if like how many jams you've done?
I can at least remember 3. There was the Grow Up. I think that was my first global game jam.
That was fantastic.
Back in the day, I don't even remember. There was one I did while I was in Scotland, and then there was kind of a jam that I did as part of there was a festival happening in Tampere, and we did like analog game jam. We made a card game, or kind of like a game using cards as the component.
I'm pretty sure that... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure that I participated in at least 25 or so jams, mostly very short ones though, but still.
Oh, there was one I did at GDC. Yeah, so like at least 4 jams.
Okay.
At least 4?
Yeah.
How many, Arvi?
About 25, I think.
25, and then this man.
Yes, so I believe the last Ludum there was my 96th.
Oh
Oh,
my
wow.
Ooh.
So you're almost hitting
don't
the
have to do
point
that.
when it becomes 3 digits.
Yes, then it's gonna be party time.
Nice.
party after the 100th
Yes.
game jam.
Wow.
Maybe you could organize the 100th for yourself, so it would be like a celebration game jam.
Where everybody does 100 mini games.
Or something. That's the plan.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, it's one where everyone has to take one of Arvi's games and kind of like jam on top of it.
Right, yeah, yeah. All right, let's go Arvi's mini talk.
Well, as you can see, I have a lot of information on the first slide, and I need to plan very carefully when I want to move forward. But hi, I'm Arvi Teikari. I'm probably best known as the developer of Baba Is You. I'm game developer originally not from Helsinki, but nowadays from Helsinki. I've been interested in game development since kindergarten. My cousin had a Super Nintendo, and a lot of older kids played games back then, and I was like, oh, I want to do the same thing. And I dabbled with a bunch of stuff as a kid, and then in primary school, a schoolmate came to me and, hey, would you like to make games? And then he introduced me to Game Maker, from which I moved to various other programs. And for about 10 years, I just spent time learning, getting used to making games, growing older, making some absolutely horrendous stuff. And then eventually in 2015, I set up my own company to sell my first commercial game, Environmental Station Alpha. And so far, I've participated in 3 commercial titles, Environmental Station Alpha, Baba Is You, and Noita. And one of the best things about releasing a game that has a very difficult name, like Environmental Station Alpha, is that you really learn how to pronounce the name correctly. But apart from these commercial things, I've participated... I thought I had participated a lot in game jams, but apparently I haven't participated in any game jams.
I don't think anybody has to do it. That many.
Yeah, but game jams have been very important for me, and I do enjoy the kind of hobbyist mindset mostly when making games. Like even now, I don't really follow the proper form when it comes to working full-time as a game developer, but rather prefer this kind of more game jam-like approach, which for me means making a prototyping. For me, game jams are perfect because they allow me to take an idea I have in my head, or maybe brainstorm a new idea that I don't have yet in my head, and check out if it works. I especially like these one-weekend game jams because during those I spent ultimately a fairly limited time working on an idea. Then I can see if it works, or usually I can see if it works or if it doesn't work. If it works, then amazing. I can either release it like that and be done, or I can decide that, hey, I want to work more on this and make some kind of a full release. If it doesn't work, whatever, I spent a fairly limited amount of time on it. I can just discard the idea, or maybe think like, okay, this didn't work, but I can see what are the parts that didn't work. Maybe I can salvage the good things for a later thing, but whatever. If I don't feel like it, I can just say that, okay, this was trash, I'll move on with my life. Of course, with game jams, there's the social element. For me, for example, the Nordic Game Jam in Copenhagen that is organized on Aprils has been very important because it's most of the jams I've participated in have been non-physical jams, and the physical jam experience is in its own way very cozy and nice, as long as it's not like too competitive, which is of course one type of game jams that can also exist. And for me, a big part of why making games at game jams is also fun is that what I like most in making games is making stuff that surprises or amuses people. I like to see the player be like happily surprised by the game doing something they didn't expect, or like surpass or subvert their expectations in some way. And I feel that game jam games are also handy in that, because then I can take an idea that maybe wouldn't work super well on like a $3 million budget AAA game if the idea is that it's Mario, but when you jump and you land, you actually break your legs, and that's the game. You wouldn't maybe be able to convince Remedy Entertainment to make a game around that. But I can make that at the Game Jam. If people hate it, it's bad, then I can, well, I tried that. I hoped it would be fun, but it wasn't. If it's fun, then I can present it, hey, here's a nice surprise, and the players can be amused, and that can be all that's needed. But at the end, I need to remind people of two things related to game jams, especially to the way I personally just described that I enjoy game jams, that in which they can be dangerous and in which modeling your idea of game development after game jams can be a bad idea if you'd only model it after game jams, which is, first of all, crunch, which you have probably already heard a bunch about. It's been discussed a lot as an issue in the game development world, in that at game jams, especially at these very short game jams, it's very fun to spend a lot of time in a short time frame and work really hard. You can get that kind of state of flow. It can be very fun, but you need a lot of time to recover from that because it's not really healthy for yourself to concentrate really hard for an extended period of time. So I feel that there's a danger of game jams normalizing this kind of crunch or working too hard or making it seem like this kind of finding that flow is the only way to make games. And that is not the case. It's just something that, at least for me, is sometimes enjoyable if I then have even enough time to recover from it. So don't believe it. If someone tells you that, yeah, working hard and burning out is part of game development, don't believe them. They are a liar and a bad person, at least in that sense, maybe not in all senses. And then another issue is that once you have made a game, even if it works and it's great, and people are like, oh, this game about Mario breaking his legs is the best game ever, what you do next with it might not be obvious. You could say that, okay, maybe this silly game wouldn't really work as a full game. I'll leave it at that. It was made for the game jam, that's all. It doesn't have to be anything more, and that's completely okay. Sometimes you might feel that, okay, maybe I can actually make a bigger game out of this, and then you start working on it and realize that, no, this doesn't work. And sometimes you might decide that, okay, I'll try to make something larger, and it actually ends up working out, and you make something larger, like happened with me and Baba Is You. Baba Is You was made at Game Jam originally, and I was kind of on the fence on whether to try to make a full game out of it, and people convinced me to try, and it worked out. So there's always the kind of certain uncertainty about whether an idea can be kind of elaborated into something bigger, or if it's at its best when it's in a very contained game jam state. But yeah, that was all from me. No tips, but maybe information.
Thank you. That's wonderful and it's really useful. Maybe, yeah, great tips, I guess, in the comments. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, while we're waiting, I just realized that there's a fifth game jam that I participated in 2017. That's my latest one, and actually out of that one came out the board game that I'm currently kind of like developing further, and I'm taking it back to that festival where it got its start. I'm going into the adult category now with a prepared board game. So 5 jams at least.
Great. And so what was the jam named?
So it's a festival called Festival. They do board games and tabletop role-playing scenarios, and they have this thing called Game Rush, which is you get a theme and you do a board game out of it. So
fantastic.
Yeah, that's kind of the best possible story, at least for me, when you make something at the game jam. It might be very rough, but then you become able to make something more out of it, and then later show people that here's the full thing.
Yeah, and it's lovely when you find that potential, but then comes the hard part of like, I actually have to turn this into a product now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's hear what Samuli has to say. Almost 100 game jams.
Yeah, thanks for laying down a lot of good tips and a lot of good practices during game jams. So I can then elevate them a little bit with my own experiences here. Mm-hmm. So I'm Samuli Jääskeläinen. You can follow me at Samul from Twitter and itch.io. Couple of words on my background. So I started studying game development at Kajaani, University of Applied Sciences, where I started this crazy thing called One Game a Month. And I did that for 7 years until I learned what Arni just told, like maybe making a crunch per month is not very healthy. So I stopped that. So now I only make like 4 or 5 games per year, which I found has been a very good balance between like amount of crunching in game jams and recovering from them. On top of that, I've been doing a global game jam around the world in different countries until Corona hit. So then I've been in Finland for a couple of years, but now I'm going to start slowly traveling again, going to the exotic country of Sweden for the global game jam this year. So I have a lot of experience from different cultures and how to make games in a cross-cultural situations as well, which I think is going to be beneficial in this game jam, as we have a lot of people from different countries. So I will be a very good person to contact if you have difficulties finding ways to how you can communicate your visions together. On my professional world, I started doing games at Mindfield Games for VR headsets, and I've transitioned from that to a hardware business. So I currently work at Varjo, making the world's most high-resolution VR headset hardware. So I'm not really working in a game industry at the moment, but on weekends I still do a lot of video games. So I have done 96 game jams, I think, or some it might be plus minus 1 or 2 during my years. And once you have done a lot of games, you start to want to find new challenges. So that's why I've been in recent years making a lot of games for platforms that are more difficult to program for, which are older, like oscilloscopes from 70s or old consoles. But sometimes the challenging platforms can be a little bit more futuristic. On the bottom, there's a card game that we made for quantum computers. And sometimes the challenge can come outside of the development of the idea itself, which what we did for a jam bike that we have done twice, where we cycle hundreds of kilometers making a game on a tandem bike with the custom Raspberry Pi computer that breaks every 100 meters, and we are repairing it. But that's a funny story. And I wanted to just highlight here that I've done like a variety of different kind of games with variety of different kind of people. And one commonality that I have found, if you want to have a successful game jam, was it in a team or was it alone, is always to think about why are you doing this game jam. Is it for learning a new tool or challenging yourself or just reinforcing the understanding of the tools? So you should be honest with yourself as that why are you making this game, and communicate it directly to the other team members, so everyone is on the same page of what they want to get from the game jam. And in the same way, you should scope the game that way. So I always think the scope of the game as like a gamble. The bigger the game, the bigger the risk, and bigger the reward possibly. But if you are going to go that way, everyone in the team should agree that, hey, this might be a little bit risky, so the game may not actually finish or complete. Or if you want to go this kind of a bit more traditional, secure way of doing a smaller game and then adding a lot of polish on top of it, which often is recommended, especially if you are doing a game jam for a first time. And I started doing game jams that way as well, and it's a totally valid way of doing game jams. And that's why it's repeated quite often as advice. And as for the tips that we heard earlier, I would like to re-emphasize the feedback. So that's the number one thing that I've seen lack of when you play other people's game jam games, is the lack of feedback of the actions that the player does. So it's always good to reinforce whatever you do with sound, audio, animation, whatever, because that makes it a lot more clear for the player what is actually happening on the screen. And I think that's it for me. So I think we can go for questions.
Yes.
Anna-Kaisa is very good at picking my brain.
Okay, yes, thank you. So fantastic. I don't think that there's like any other tips or comments, or like you're absolutely leveling the ground for the jamming perfectly. I also realized that if you want to hear more from these people, Eevi, Arvi, Samuli, we have a talk in our YouTube channel in other lectures of games now. Fantastic further tips for developing things. So for instance, we just recently talked in our podcast about the VR games that you're still following, Samuli, in the role of VR headsets constantly. So yeah,
check our YouTube channel. You
check
can
our
find
YouTube channel
mentors,
for more of these.
Talks.
If the audience wants to ask something from our mentors at this point before we go to the theme, now would be your chance. Because there's like a wild question that appears. All right?
If there are no questions, I'd like to just quickly, as an anecdote related to this scoping thing that Samuli mentioned, in that if you are in a situation where everyone in your team agrees to it, or if you are working alone, it can sometimes be a lot of fun to vastly overscope your idea, kind of intentionally go for something that you know that you cannot finish in time, and then try to make the basic systems of the game so simple to build on that you can, as quickly as possible, to get to the point where you can add kind of more stuff and then raise yourself to see kind of how far can I get with this idea. It's something that I've sometimes done when I've been working alone on a game jam, because then I don't have to, and no one else has to suffer, only I have to suffer for it. But it has been sometimes very, of course, very hard on yourself, because technically you can add more stuff forever until the bell rings and the deadline is upon us or upon you. But it's also very rewarding when you see that, oh, I got so much done on this. I can recommend it if you are a person who hates themselves, enjoys pain.
So would roguelikes be a genre that helps?
I guess, yeah, or like a advent exploration thing where it's like the actual exploration is very simple, and then it's like how many different things I can do that you explore, something like that.
I think we were working with Jere in one game jam, and it just stuck my mind forever that the way that you plan your timing is that you focus on that core. And if you have like 20 hours time, you need to plan it so that you're able to focus on that core like less than 10 hours. And then you can use the rest of the time to make more features or polish the game. So I think it's like really valid still to work with. So I'm sure that all of you guys also agree on that at least like scheduling wise, we tend to overscope what we can do.
Yep. And scheduling wise, we're running out of time.
Yes.
So I guess our jammers, especially our jammers across the earth, is almost midnight to them. So we have to rush in order to announce the theme of this jam.
Yes. Let's have the slide on the screen as soon as it comes. So what is the theme? So we do have the technical theme of using AI tools, but we also have the surprise theme that helps you to get inspired and helps you start to build your game idea, because the technical part doesn't really necessarily give you immediate ideas. Maybe it does. Wouldn't for me. So I need something to go with that. So I don't know, drum rolls. So the theme is scream.
Wow.
So yeah, scream. I mean, it can mean anything, of course. It can be a sound, the screaming sound. It can be the painting, as you can see in our kind of theme picture for the jam. It can be the movie. I mean, there's a lot of things to draw from that horrible series of movies. But it can be also something as like obviously horror theme, for instance. Solip will appreciate that.
No horror games for me.
Maybe a goat. A sound of a goat, that is one of the screams that I like. And I haven't prepared for you, but we do have the same question for Solip's brainstorming. But we have a question, what is your favorite scream? And we're going to start with these innocent mentors that were not prepared for this question. But whoever is first with their favorite, what is your favorite scream? Is this the painting, or is it a certain sound, or in a movie or something like that? Somebody looks like that he would be already ready. No?
I'm
Arvi
just
is ready.
I really like S-cream, soft cream. It's favorite.
Good. Eevi has...
I know. The classic from every movie that can cram it in, the Wilhelm scream.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is definitely there.
That will make for a good sound effect if you have anyone falling off from anywhere.
Yeah, I like the scream of seagulls.
Oh wow! Yeah.
On the seaside, because that reminds me of summer always.
Yeah.
Oh,
Also
yeah.
reminds me of losing so many croissants in the Helsinki summer.
Yeah. Also, husky dogs have the most amazing screams. They are the screamiest dogs. I can recommend looking up YouTube videos of huskies screaming when they don't want to do something.
Yeah, my favorite scream is the goats. And Solip, did you have a favorite scream?
I couldn't come up with that. That was the problem. We were already brainstorming about this question ever since we decided on this question and theme. And then what is my favorite scream? Oh,
Was it something that wouldn't be horror?
yes.
Anything
No
that-
horror, please. That's the only wish that I have. No horror.
I think like
games.
interpreting game jam themes, like you can go really like Arvi was going for completely another direction. So just don't get stuck with the theme. Just use it in a kind of funny, a clever way. You can do deeper interpretations on it. Like it could be technology. Maybe you can scream to your mobile phone. There's so many different ways you can do this. But it can, if you want to, you just can add a screaming sound effect. Even the classic one.
Yeah, there's anecdotal. A friend of mine about 10 years ago made the game Gnilly, which is basically the classic Zelda 2D game, but the audience screams in a shared microphone, and the loudness of the scream defines kind of what kind of damage you are doing, and different enemies require different decibel levels to be defeated.
Yep.
So that's one approach.
You can also ask from AI how they think about this topic. I did ask from ChatGPT, and they said, and as an AI, I do not have a feelings or preferences, so I do not have a favorite scream. That was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, that was very generic and very textbook.
Is there something
AI
else?
Response.
I can help you. So I did ask, how popular is the goat scream? There is some more. So apparently the scream of a goat, also known as a bleat, is common sound in rural areas where goats are kept, and it's not considered a popular scream in popular culture. I'm like, how old are you? However, in recent years, the scream of a goat has become a popular internet meme, where the bleat is edited and used in various viral videos and memes, usually as a comedic effect. Some YouTubers and TikTok users have also, have also used it as a background sound for their videos. The popularity of the scream of a goat as an internet meme can vary depending on the time and the context, but it is not as well known as iconic screams in popular culture like the Wilhelm scream or the Psycho scream. So there you go, Eevi, yours as well. But yeah, it's helpful to ask also from, it feels like a middle-aged person with the way that they are describing this. But yeah, you can go to different directions with AI as well.
There are also always screams of delight and such, like positive screams.
Yeah, and you can think about the age limit of that game then.
It doesn't have to be like sexy delight.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, but I've done a prototype that we thought that the chair would moan out of the nice pleasure that you sit on it. But when you tried it, it's like completely impossible to avoid the connotation.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
It's just that you have to try it. How does it work in your game? And it was a surprise for us, and we were making a pink hairy chair, so it didn't really first come out, but then with the sounds it did.
Right. Yeah.
Test your game.
Yes.
That's your game.
But as Thorsten was saying, it's like we can also do mature
And
games.
let's test our schedule on the
Yes.
slide. Yes. Although there's a typo,
That's
we'll
fine.
ignore it. So it's a kickoff today. And you don't have to be a student. You don't have to be a student of any of our partner institutions. We do have people who studies for life. Who's
Yeah.
also join our jam. So if you are inspired by our theme, already have popping up some ideas of scream or whatever, then this is your chance. This is your chance to join.
Yeah, and it is not a super crunchy jam, so you can decide on your own schedule, work with your team to work sustainably. That's one of the reasons we want to have it as a longer jam. So you don't have to crunch the entire month to get as polished and marvelous and multi-level game with hundreds of characters. You don't have to do that. It can be still a very simple game.
Yes.
So we're encouraging people to join Solid's brainstorming tomorrow at 10 of local time.
10 in the morning in Finland. Count your time zone. And we're going to start brainstorming session on our Discord. You can find our Discord channel invitation link on our website, on our social media, everywhere. And we're going to start the brainstorming, introducing to each other, talk about your favorite Scream and how we can move forward with that idea. Yes. But overall, it's also I'm gonna repeat all those rules and schedules and all those details for the event tomorrow at the brainstorming session.
Yeah. And before we end this thing, I would still like to kind of this hot potato of AI tools. Any comments on that from your perspective? Like, would you recommend anything for the jammers? Like, what are the tools that you would recommend people to use?
I think about the tools, I don't want to say any specific recommendations, but whatever you use, I think it's very good what you earlier said, that let's be transparent of the tools what you are using, because it's still not completely, it's a bit of an open to interpretation what kind of data sets these tools are using. So it's good to be very open about using them.
Yeah.
And then could be many different ways of using it. So, I mean, we're seeing the new era or like interesting time, pivotal time of AI discourse on game development.
In a wider sense.
In a wider sense. So consider maybe inviting your AI fellow as your jammer together with your team. Maybe it could be work as inspiration for you. It could give you a hint if you're stuck for idea. Maybe ask AI or inspire the concept arts from the AI. Many different ways we can explore.
I feel that right now, especially when it comes to image generation, the topic is such it raises very heated feelings. So personally, right now, I wouldn't feel comfortable using like AI-generated assets directly in my game. Yeah. But I guess using them as inspiration would be more of what I would go for. And also something that I was wondering about is that because the neural network systems that are basically below, but like underneath all these current AI systems are in some way derived from procedural generation, which is a much simpler system. I was wondering if you, as the people running this whole thing, would be okay with people claiming that my procedural generation system is actually the AI that I'm using. Would that be a valid interpretation?
We are open to that too. So if you want to do procedural instead of just like having the AI as part of the jamming team. It is, even though it will be like live running in the game itself. Like, of course, it is. And if you write it yourself, you can do it,
Yeah, it's kind of the building blocks of AI are in the procedural generation. And that's kind of where my biggest interests lie. So that immediately came to mind when the theme was revealed.
Yeah. However, not everybody is able to do that. So that's one of the things. And there was a question in the chat that are there any audio-related AI tools? And there are. I'm going to provide a link in our Discord, for instance, into one service that can generate you voice acting on different characters. It's amazing what these things can do. But yeah, go with your comfort zone. If you don't feel like that, be aware, read a little bit of the current debate and see where you want to stand with the tools. Right now, we are practicing what is the best possible way to welcome them or block them.
Yeah, and also I highly recommend chatting with the ChatGPT AI. That's super fun, but be very critical of what it's saying, because I started asking it like how to make like good game jam games and how to scope them, and it was scoping games that you play for 2 days, not make in 2 days. Yeah. So there was a lot of content in the game.
Yeah, I've also followed how the AI the ChatGPT can actually create the instruction for crosseted plush toys. So they don't necessarily come out that wholesome, but maybe the weirdness part, which also our speakers were talking about today, would be good. Eevi, do you want to add as a writer anything?
Not much. I unfortunately missed Charlene's talk earlier today, but yeah, I'd be kind of curious to see kind of like how AI can help with text generation.
Yeah.
Because as we know, writer's worst nightmare is that empty page, and even if you don't use the final text, having some kind of raw text that you can start to edit and make into something that is more in line with your vision could be helpful. So
yeah. So a fear of blank paper is gone, I guess. There's a question. Do we have the mic that we can run to? I can repeat the question. So the question was that are there any limitations for the tools to use in this game jam? There is not. There are the legal limitations, so check the licenses, but it's based on your own choices what you want to use and explore for. Just be aware that it's on your own comfort zone, so that you know what the tool is doing and what is the debate behind that. So, well, for instance, Midjourney, they require a certain license if you want to commercialize the content that comes out of there. So just check what is there. So you can definitely use it as an inspiration, at least, like you would like Google image search, for instance, or going to an art exhibition. So yeah, there is no limitation in that sense. One of the reasons is that we are not super informed at the moment what should be the guidelines of doing this. So we are leaving it to you to try to figure out how this trend works right now. When we first initially planned this, in the early September, the discussion was very different. So it's moving on, and there's going to be more tones, and it's going to evolve for the next months even.
Can I blame games now if my game ends up taking over the world?
No.
Okay.
It's all complete.
Limited liability.
Limited liability indeed.
Dang.
So I want to thank our friends, Future Play, Metacore, High Platonic partnership, and then Aalto Online Learning and Aalto Studios for this day. And we're just gonna, kick off the jam in the 10 morning tomorrow.
Yep.
You can start thinking about your things. Just take it slowly. Be good to your own body and your own schedules, and take the best out of this jam. Yes. And the feedback is guaranteed, so this is very valuable experience for anybody that does. Yes. It's like, even though you wouldn't need the feedback, it's lovely when someone at least has played the game.
So for an announcement, if you want to join our brainstorming session, is also a time where we're going to introduce each other and talk about what's your favorite scream, just like what the mentors did. Please leave your comments in our brainstorming channel on our Discord server, and you can first introduce yourself and then think about what your favorite scream, what's the answer for this question, and post it on our Discord server. You can post it before the brainstorming session so that people in a different time zone can already see it by the time we start the session. So we'll continue onward with that. And I believe one of the audience also had another question.
There was a question about the matchmaking.
Yeah, the question was about
So
matchmaking.
we get the sign-ups, and then we look, there is an ambition level and a time commitment. I mean, try to match you according to that, because that's what we learned, that those are the most important things, at least for the teams to work together, so that somebody wouldn't want to do like super amount of hours, or do something like super radical, and then someone just wants to make a game in 2 hours. That's an important thing to match.
So in the registration form, you'll find it on our website to attend the jam. When you said you're going to attend the jam, there's going to be an ask question whether you are interested in matchmaking. From there, we're going to also ask you your passion level, how much time you want to commit, and then from there, Anna-Kaisa and I will give you a first initial matchmaking team suggestion in the middle of this week, which our jammers can evaluate whether they want to accept the suggestions or they want to look in for more teams as well. Yeah. And then sometimes we have jammers join in later. Yeah. We're assuming that some jammers might join after Global Game Jam Week. In that case, we might also have some people raising their hand that they want to join in the matchmaking. And so we teachers will give the first suggestions to the jammers if there's any vacancy in the team, or whether you guys are looking for another additional team members or form a new team. So that
it's totally based on who is signed up for the matchmaking. So we can't promise you're like an ideal partner like in any kind of matchmaking. So it's just based on the pool that we have.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it. So we're going to kick off this amazing AI jam about
Scream with AI tools. I guess it's very fitting.
All this banner has been a spoiler the whole time. Get it? Get it? Yes.
So thank you, Eevi, Arvi, and Samuli, as well as Tarja, who will join us later with the process, but just couldn't be here today. And thank you, everybody, for the entire day, and hopefully see you on the dinner. And if you're not able to join the dinner, please eat something on your own. Thank you.